Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of Couch Cruisers. If you've been following along, then you're aware that this is part two of the Eat Like a Cruiser series, and there's two parts in this series. If you're not, there'll be a link on the page where you can click to go and watch part one. Um, you might want to see part one though, so that this makes sense if you haven't seen it already. So to go back over the objectives of this test, I wanted to know what would it be like to provision a sailboat and eat nothing but what you had provisioned for 30 days while you were doing some long transatlantic, transpacific passage. So I bought 30 days worth of food that I thought I would need for my hypothetical trip. And now that I've finished eating it, I can let you guys know what I thought of the experience. And I'm going to go over, did I find it enjoyable? Did I think I was eating fairly healthy? What did it cost? Not just in terms of money, but what did it cost in terms of electricity use and propane use? And then finally, would I want to do this long term? If I was actually cruising, would I be okay with eating like this for years on end? So here you can see my dry goods storage for my voyage. The top left is the beginning of departure. Top right is the start of week 2, bottom left week 3, and bottom right week 4. As somebody pointed out in the comments to the first version of this video, bananas were a terrible choice. All my bananas had to be consumed during the first week because they were all brown and rotting. Well, getting to the point of rotting. The apples were an excellent choice. The apples lasted a long time. The problem was I liked them and I ate them all. So I should have gone 5 times as many apples and totally left off the bananas. The oranges lasted about 3 weeks and they were good. I would take oranges again. Melons were good, but they only made it about 10 days. I have a chart later in the slideshow that will show you the expectancy for several different fruits so that if you were going to provision, you'd have an idea of about how long would things last. This was all news to me because typically I go to the store every week, get what I need for the week, and I don't worry about spoilage because it never makes it that long. Someone asked about milk. You can see there on the top of the fridge in the bottom right hand corner the green containers. Those are shelf-stable milk where it lasts about 6 months and it doesn't need to be refrigerated. That way I could save fridge space and just throw a milk container in the fridge anytime I needed cold milk and just keep one container in the fridge and the other sitting out. Another mistake I made when provisioning the boat was you'll see on the shelf there the canned beans. While they're convenient, they certainly don't taste as good as dried beans, and if I were to do it again, I would go with dried beans over the canned. The other provisioning tip that I would throw out there is flour. I didn't realize how much flour it takes to make bread, but figure 5 or 6 cups of flour to make a loaf of bread. So if you're planning on baking bread a couple times a week, plan on taking a lot of flour with you. I didn't take nearly enough. Here is the fridge. Again, it's departure and start of week 2, start of week 3, start of week 4. I actually forgot to take a picture of the fridge on week 2, so I took a picture of, I do have a picture though of one of the meals that I made to show you guys the type of things that I was eating. Just some chicken with some canned vegetables and some rice. Not overly exciting, but health-wise I think I was doing pretty good. I didn't realize how shelf-stable eggs are, but the eggs lasted just fine the whole time in the fridge. The other thing that did extremely well was iceberg lettuce. I had iceberg lettuce going into week 4, which I was surprised about. And that was great because being able to put some salad on or some lettuce on something made it taste fresh. One thing that I did mess up on my cold storage is I stocked up on chicken. If I had it to redo, I wouldn't take 90% chicken. A pound of beef, a pound of chicken, or a pound of turkey, they're all about the same size or same volume. So if you're stocking up for long term, why take all chicken? You might as well make yourself an assortment and have better things to eat or more of a variety to eat instead of stocking up on chicken like I did. The other relatively poor choice I made was the bag of spinach. That bag of spinach made it like 3 days, so I wouldn't recommend wasting space on something like that. The tomatoes did great, they lasted a long time, and the carrots would have still been alive if I hadn't eaten them. So after the end of the voyage, this is what was left in provisions. It's a really good thing that my hypothetical voyage only encountered fair wind and following seas, because I would have been eating nothing but rice in another day or two. That brought me to another point. If I was to actually do this in real life, one thing that I would recommend is massively stocking up on cans. While they're not the healthiest and while they're not the best tasting, you're certainly going to have some variety and not end up on your last day of your voyage with a selection like I have here. If you were going to take a voyage like the one in our hypothetical experiment, I would highly recommend baking bread. It's healthy, it's hearty, it smells good, just makes you feel good. It's a great snack. I really enjoyed making bread while I was on the trip. One thing I would recommend though is before you take off, maybe learn to bake a little. I had never tried to make bread before, and I had no idea how sensitive yeast is to the temperature of the water when you put it in and the temperature that you let it rise at. So I ended up with a lot of very dense breads. And these are my 5 attempts at bread, and they all tasted fine, but they were about as dense. About 1 slice was probably 2 slices worth of calories because they just didn't rise correctly. So can I eat healthily like this, and did I enjoy it? Overall, I did enjoy eating like this. It was easy to make meals. It was easy to pick out what you were going to have. There was nothing with really long cook times or preparation times. I do think that overall I was probably a little bit high in salt, just due to the fact that there's a lot of salt in canned foods. One thing I think that makes up for that in the health department, though, is there was no junk food available on the boat. There was no candy, no chips, that kind of stuff. So that probably helped overall. There at the bottom, you see my weight graphed over the month. I have a digital scale. You step on it and it syncs to MyFitnessPal. So I just exported the data from there. And you can't really draw a lot of conclusions about a pound change over a month, but it's going the right direction. So I would say overall, yes, this was a healthy, enjoyable experience. So for the costs of provisioning and resource usage, food itself was $170, which I find very reasonable for a month worth of food. I attribute that to not eating a lot of prepackaged stuff like cookies, chips, that kind of stuff, and making my food myself, I think, drastically reduced the costs. For the times, I just kept a spreadsheet and I wrote down every time I microwaved, used the oven, or used the stove. For the stove, if I used multiple burners, then I added the time together. Like if I cooked on 2 burners for a meal, one for 5 minutes, one for 10 minutes, I would add those together and write down 15 minutes for the day. So to come up with how many amps I consumed with the microwave, I took the conversion formula that's watts divided by volts will give you the number of amps, and my microwave's 1200 watt microwave, so you divide that by 12 volts and you come up with 125 amps my microwave would consume per hour. In real life, it would actually consume more due to the inefficiencies of running it off of an inverter, but we're just going to go with the exact numbers for this demonstration. We microwaved for 225 minutes, and that comes out to 3.75 hours of total microwave time over the 30 days. 375 hours at 125 amps per hour, we used 468 amps of electricity. On the propane side, just for a point of reference, your typical barbecue grill propane tank is 17 pounds. And over the 30 days, I only consumed 2.8 pounds. To my mind, it seems that propane is a much more efficient way to cook than is microwaving. To arrive at the numbers used by the stove for propane, I used the Force 10 because you see that a lot in cruising books as their favorite stove. I used that as my reference. and the Force 10 website lists the BTU for their burner, and I just assumed I used the big burner for everything. So 1 pound of propane has 21,000 British thermal units, or BTU. So you just take the size of your burner, divide it by the amount of BTU that your fuel source has, and you can figure out how much you consume per hour. And for this burner, I consume 0.38 pounds of propane per hour. And then we figure out how many that is per minute. And then all I got to do is take the pounds per minute and multiply it by the amount of cook time that I used. So for my stove, I came up with 1.4 pounds of propane. And for my oven, I came out with 1.3. So 2.8 pounds of propane seems very reasonable. With a 17-pound tank, I should be able to go months. Do I want to eat like this long term? I actually enjoyed the experiment. At no time during the voyage did I feel deprived or hungry or craving anything. I would have liked to have taken less chicken, and I should have stocked a variety. As I said before, all meats have about the same volume, so you might as well take a variety. I would have liked to have had fewer canned goods and more fresh food. Or for the beans, I should have gone with dried instead of canned, just because the dried tastes so much better. And I should have stocked some better shelf-stable vegetables and fruits to keep me from needing so many canned or dried goods. I'd also like, if I were to do this long term, to have at least a little bit of healthy-ish junk food. Maybe some oatmeal cookies or some protein bars, just something that you can unwrap and eat quick without having to actually stop and cook. And if I were to do this long term, I'd also like to learn to bake, at least to be able to make a decent loaf of bread. So this shows the shelf life of some common vegetables and fruit. You have the source down there at the bottom. I couldn't find an actual creator of it to give them credit, but that's where you can find the link to the entire thing. As you can see here on the chart, I should have known better than to take bananas with me. They were a terrible choice. Apples, though, would have been great. Lemons, great. Some of the others that I thought came out really good were potatoes and tomatoes. And here's a more complete list of some of the shelf-stable items you would want to pack for a longer voyage. The apples, oranges, lemons, limes, pumpkins, etc. are all great choices. One thing I did take that was great was squash. I would recommend stocking up on a bunch of squash if I was going to do this long term. It tastes great, it's fresh, and it lasts forever. One other thing that I noticed is at the end of the 4 weeks, I was totally out of food. You know, I would have had to eat just rice to make it in a couple more days. If I were to do this in real life, I think I would stock a lot more shelf-stable staples, such as beans, rice, flour, yeast, so that at least I can have a variety if I end up in that situation again. Also, if I were to replan this, I would take a lot more fresh food and fruit and vegetables, plan on or hope to eat the fresh stuff, and then have canned in reserve. So thank you all for your time. I hope you liked the video. Please leave me comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know if you liked it or what you'd like to see next. I'm always open for suggestions for other videos. Thanks again. Bye.